We made this.
Welcome to the June episode of Back to the Decade, the podcast where we rewind 10 years and reflect on pop culture of the time. I'm Thomas Adams, joined as always by Nick Hoffman.
Hello.
Nick, happy early Father's Day. We're recording Thursday, 3 days before our first official Father's Day as parents. You guys have any plans for the weekend?
Yeah, man. Pretty cool. First official Father's Day. Kind of surreal, I guess. We are going to the Van Gogh exhibit tomorrow over at Pullman Yards or whatever that place is called in Kirkwood. So that's pretty looking forward to that. And then it's like kind of one of our first outings without Lizzie too, because we're just gonna let her go to daycare.
Yeah, that's nice.
Just take the afternoon to ourselves. And then good friend of mine, Charlie, that lives over neighborhood over, is having a big birthday bash, and they're celebrating gay pride and all that stuff. So that's going to be fun. And then Sunday, I think for like the actual Father's Day, we're going to just go to like a pub that I've been wanting to check out for a while, get some beers, food. And hopefully we don't have to watch a Game 7 Hawks versus the 76ers. Hopefully they can close that shit out tomorrow night. So that's the plan.
Well, I mean, a Game 7 would still be worthwhile if they could win.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, of course. I mean, I at first was like rooting for a Game 7 because I really did not think we'd win in Game 5 last night.
Right.
Which we were down by 26 points, and we had a historic, epic comeback to game against the Philadelphia 76ers. It was incredible. So now that we're up 3-2 and we're coming back to Atlanta, I really, really just would prefer to close out in Atlanta. I just didn't think that was going to be the case. I thought for sure they would be winning that game last night, and then they could come home, they'd win that game, and then we'd have a Game 7. But it doesn't have to be like that now. So I can't take games like that, dude. Like I'll be a nervous mess.
They've done it 2 games in a row because like the other game was like that too, where it was down to the wire, and then the Hawks came back, and then they like almost gave it up. And yeah, although nothing was more stressful to me than Game 1, where the Hawks almost did the reverse of Game 5, where they had the huge lead and they almost surrendered it in Game 1.
Yeah,
it's been fun. It's been fun watching them kind of surpass expectations. But that all sounds nice. I think we're just gonna hang out around here. I had a friend come into town last weekend and do some early celebration and get some nice baby free time.
Nice, man. That's always good.
Is she okay? I thought I heard.
Who's that?
I thought I heard your baby. Did I not hear your baby?
No, you hear this door. I'm trying to I think that may have helped my internet connection. I'm trying to improve my internet connection because it's down to very low bars. And then once I open this door, the router is really just like right out there through that window. And I don't know, man. It's so spotty in this room. Sometimes it works perfect. Sometimes it doesn't. Now I have full bars, so I guess
we're rolling then.
We're good. I guess opening the door was a good idea. Okay. Sorry. You can cut all this out.
We have a fun episode today. I'm excited because I think all of these movies I had a really fun time revisiting and watching. And we're going to cover X-Men First Class, the reboot of the X-Men franchise, Super 8, and a lesser-known indie film called Beginners. But before we get into those, do you have anything from the last couple of weeks that you've been watching that caught your attention, that you really enjoyed besides the NBA playoffs?
Yeah, I was going to say NBA playoffs. For sure, man. I'm finally getting back into watching new shows, or well, maybe it's just that there are new shows to watch. There's a bit of a lull there for a while, but definitely Mayor of Easttown. We watched that every week, finished it. It was incredible. Really enjoyed that show. Kate Winslet, just I love her. She's one of the greatest, if not the greatest actress of our current generation, in my opinion. And so yeah, that was great. Really like the show Hacks, also on HBO Max, with also Jean Smart, where Jean Smart plays more of a central character. She kind of plays like a Joan Rivers type when she was still like a comedian in Vegas. She had her own stage and everything. That's a really funny comedy about a young girl that comes in and helps her write new jokes to keep her relevant. That's Kat's favorite show, but I really enjoyed it as well. It's like that and Mary of Easttown are neck and neck. And then, of course, I just, Loki just started. So been watching Loki, which the first episode came out last week. Second episode came out last night, I guess. I haven't watched it yet, but really, really, really loved that first episode. And I love that character. I love a good anti-hero, man. Big anti-hero guy. So, yeah, man. Those are my three big shows that I've watched in the last couple months.
I did start watching Loki. I'm excited about that one because it does have a different feel to it. I wasn't as into Falcon and the Winter Soldier because that felt kind of like more Marvel retreads, but this just feels...
Yeah, I haven't watched that.
Yeah, this feels new and fresh, and I'm kind of excited for it. I've heard about the other two and heard them hyped up a lot, but just haven't made time to check them out yet, but I definitely want to. I did start a show on AMC Plus called Kevin Can Fuck Himself. Have you heard of this show?
No. I like the title.
I only watched the first episode, but it's like nothing I've seen before, and it's actually, I don't know, I'm really interested to see where it's going. The premise is that Annie Murphy, who plays Alexis in Schitt's Creek, it's what she's best known for. She plays the wife in like your classic early 2000s sitcom where the man is like this like overweight, unattractive guy married to this, younger, attractive woman, and kind of treats her like shit, and they're in this shitty marriage. But basically the premise is that every time she's in their living room, she's on a multi-camera sitcom, but when she leaves the set, she's in a gritty Breaking Bad style drama, and basically like realizing the circumstances of her situation and deciding her only way out of the loop is to kill her husband. So it's like half gritty revenge drama, half over the top sitcom.
Nice.
Yeah, so it felt like weirdly reminiscent of WandaVision, but I enjoyed it. I mean, for the first episode, enough to be like really curious where it's going. So that's the only show I really watched, but I'm like back in the movie going routine. I got to see 2 movies in theaters these last couple of weeks. I saw A Quiet Place Part 2, which was awesome.
And I'm dying to see that.
And then, even though it's on HBO Max, we went and saw In the Heights and just had a blast with that movie. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have been able to check it out at home, but it's just kind of a fun musical that maybe wasn't like amazing, but just a really, really fun time. And the last thing I wanted to bring up was Bo Burnham's Inside, which is a comedy special released on Netflix 3-4 weeks ago or so. And Bo Burnham's one of my favorite comedians. He's right in my age range, so I feel like a lot of his comedy kind of fits with my sense of humor. But he's also a talented director. He did the movie 8th Grade. That's his like first directing project, which I loved. I think it was my favorite movie of 2018.
I've still never watched that.
It's one of my favorite coming of age stories. I think he just does like a really great job of capturing the middle school experience. And yeah, I love that movie a lot. And then he did Inside this year, which is it's kind of hard to describe, but it's a one-man show that he shot, directed, edited, performed, wrote entirely by himself inside of a room over the last 15 months while COVID was going on. And it's this weird mix of comedy and sadness and like theater and all of these things kind of blended into this 1 hour and 20-minute special that just, I don't know, it's weirdly the most emblematic piece of film that I've watched in terms of capturing what the quarantine experience was actually like. Just that feeling of being stuck in this space with limited creativity and flexibility in terms of what you're able to do. And I think it was just tremendous. I know that critics have been raving about it since it came out, but I wanted to shout that out. And I think it's maybe my favorite thing that he's done.
Definitely gonna check that out. Yeah, it sounds really cool.
Yeah, it's definitely a one-of-a-kind experience. But let me see, anything else before we head on back? I think that'll do it. We have plenty to talk about with these 3 movies this month. So let's go ahead and hit the rewind.
Let us go back to the decade.
I don't know why this cough decided to come back while I'm recording.
Yeah, what the hell, dude?
It's not been a problem like all week.
That was like 3 weeks ago this happened.
Maybe I just don't exercise my voice that much. What do you want to start with? Which one?
You want to just go ahead and get the X-Men out of the way? Yeah, and then we can go.
All right. Let's get into our review of X-Men First Class.
There's so much more to you than pain and anger. There's good too. I felt it.
What do you know about me?
Everything. We're the next stage of human evolution. There's others out there. We can help them.
Mankind, they're gonna turn on us.
They need us.
You ready for this?
Let's find out.
X-Men First Class. This film is not yet rated.
Nick, are you a fan of X-Men?
Love the X-Men, dude. Yeah, big fan. I was a huge fan of the cartoon from the 90s, comic books, and then, of course, when the first X-Men came out, live action in I guess that was like the late 90s, wasn't it? Or was it early 2000s? Can't even remember. But yeah, Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, perfect. The casting in those movies were great. X-Men, X-Men 2, X3 was kind of file of shit, but that's why X-Men First Class came out, and I thought it was a really good reboot to this series, but at the same time, still keeping those characters intact from the original live action films as well. So, yeah, man, I was really excited about X-Men First Class when it came out, and I really enjoyed it then in 2011, and I had watched it probably 3 or 4 more times since then, and then revisiting again for the podcast here. Yeah, it's a really enjoyable movie. I think now I don't know how well it's aged, because I think with the movies that have come out since, like I'm much more of a fan of like Days of Future Past. And then of course Logan came out and just like fucked my world up. I love that movie so much. And his character, so yeah, Hugh Jackman playing Wolverine is just like my favorite thing. So now when there's an X-Men movie and he's not in it, I'm like, oh well. Like the best scene to me in First Class is when they're like recruiting all the mutants, and they walk into the bar, shows up. And they try to introduce themselves, and very famously, Logan tells them to fuck off, and they do. And then that's it. It's just like the cameo for that first movie, and you don't see him again until Days of Future Past. But yeah, man, I thought this was a really good reboot because they kind of a lot of it got away from them from in X3, and then those standalone Wolverine movies weren't great either until Logan. So
Logan aside, what's your favorite X-Men movie?
oh yeah, I was thinking about this earlier today. Everyone seems to, for the most part, think that X2 is the best one, which it is very good, and I do like that movie a lot, especially because it is very like Logan Wolverine centric. But for me, it's got to be Days of Future Past, which was it was the third. Yeah, I think it was the third movie in this reboot franchise, right?
It's just the second. Was it
the second?
Yeah, it's right after First Class.
Okay, well then, yeah, yeah, they were kind of on fire there. Days of Future Past had like everything I wanted in an X-Men movie, and I'm a huge fan and sucker of time travel as well. So, Logan going in the past to like correct some future mistakes was really good. And then, of course, I was always wanting them to bring in the Sentinels.
Mm-hmm.
Growing up, with the cartoons, you always had the Sentinels that were like mutant destroyers. So it was really cool to finally see one of those as well. Although I was kind of disappointed in the way they ended up looking. I think I'd have to go back and watch Days of Future Past. It's been a while, but I just know that that's my favorite one. X2 is not too far behind, but yeah, for sure.
I think I'm probably between those two as well. I also would put First Class into consideration. It just is a little bit lacking in terms of the action, probably. But I think that I like the X-Men a lot. I'm not like an X-Men guy, I would say. It's not my favorite superhero IP. But this movie in particular, I remember going to see it and just being completely refreshed by them, introducing these new characters. I think that James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender are phenomenal as these characters. Like, they could not have found better matches for Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen to come in and play the younger versions of, Professor X and Magneto. And I think that in the realm of superhero movies, it's really the most interesting dynamic to me is the friendship / enemy relationship that Charles and Eric have, because it's they're these two mutants that are fighting for a similar thing. They just have very different ways that they want to go about it. One of them wants to, lead a little more with violence. The other wants a more peaceful approach. And all of it feels very reminiscent of the civil rights era. And yeah, I always admired X-Men for that. Like, it was always supposed to be kind of a metaphor for civil rights, but this storyline between mutants that are fighting for equal rights with human beings. But I think what First Class really gets right is just it's really focused on characters before anything. And it's also, it has Kevin Bacon in kind of a fun villain role.
Oh man, I was about to say Kevin Bacon.
It's hard to go wrong with Kevin Bacon.
He's great in this. Pretty cool villain. Like, he can like harness energy and he can keep himself young. And I guess he's, what is it in this movie? He's like aging faster than he wants to. So
yeah, because he's really old. Like, I think he was the same age back in World War II that he is when the movie takes place in I believe it's the 60s.
Well, he's the one that kills, Magneto's mother.
Right.
And that, obviously sets him off for path of destruction and revenge. And, he's a very angry man.
He is. But I think that so many of the most memorable moments of this movie for me are those quieter moments with Magneto kind of harnessing that rage and that pain. And there's a really great moment with a satellite tower where Professor X is trying to get Eric to move the satellite tower, and he's unable to do it because he can't focus, and he says that he needs the anger, and I forget the exact line, but it's something to the effect of finding balance in that space between rage and bliss, or something like that.
Yeah.
It's a really good line, and I think
Maybe you could play the clip.
yeah, I could find the clip
right now.
You know, I believe that true focus lies somewhere between rage and serenity.
The two of them are the best part of the movie. I think the kids are fun too. But rewatching,
I have a problem with one though. Like one is so bad.
Which one specifically?
And I was just now realizing, like, it's a young Zoe Kravitz. That Angel character is like, Jesus, god awful. Like what? She's like she has like fucking butterfly wings. I don't know, or like little like fly wings, and she can, she can fly, I guess. And then her character in the end, when she's helping them fight or whatever, just gets like literally like batted like a fly. Like she's just out of the picture. I just think her, like, who was like, oh man, we got to have that fly girl. What a great power that is. It just seems so useless.
Yeah, her character is really dumb. I
love Zoe Kravitz. I love her, and she's turned into a really great actress. But that character is just like, he couldn't have found a better mutant than that one. She's got fly wings. That's it. And she was a stripper.
This might be a controversial opinion, but someone who is also a wonderful actress that is, younger in this movie, who I don't think is very good in this movie, is Jennifer Lawrence.
J-Law.
I think that she's the weakest part of the main, the core cast, in my opinion. She's just, I don't know. Rewatching it this time, there's something about her that just felt like she's kind of phoning it in. She's really good. She's not into it that much.
She's really good in Days of Future Past.
I kind of want to revisit that one because I remember her being good in one of these.
Well, you have to wait until 2014.
I have to put it on the back burner. She's freaking awful in Apocalypse, which is the one that comes after Days of Future Past.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know. You know what? I did watch that one because what's his name? Who's the bad guy? The actor? What's the actor's name? Oscar Isaac. Dude, his fucking character, Apocalypse, looks straight up like Ooze from Power Rangers movie. I mean, it's like I couldn't, like, every time he came on screen, I was like, oh my god, dude, I can't watch this. I'm just dying over here. I'm dying laughing because he looks like the Mr. Ooze, or whatever the fuck his name was in the Power Rangers movie.
Yeah, he looks kind of like a blue thumb.
Yeah, that was not. I mean, it was okay. I think I liked it more than I thought I would, but it wasn't great.
Yeah, so I think that this is it's a very good blockbuster superhero movie, but I don't know, it didn't hold up quite as well for me as the first time I saw it, when I was very pleasantly surprised and refreshed by the way that they were able to reboot this franchise. But all in all, I really enjoyed X-Men First Class, and I think that it's, it features some great performances from McAvoy and Fassbender.
Yeah, it's cool, man. And it sets up the characters really well. Towards the end, they have that standoff on the beach where basically the military, the U.S. government, just like wants mutants to die, and they're about to strike them with like a ton of firepower, missiles, all kinds of things on the beach, and Magneto, of course, is able to take control of them and turn them around, and kind of gives you that origin story of both Magneto and Professor X, because as he's trying to dodge like these bullets that Rose Byrne, we didn't even mention Rose Byrne being in this, but she is trying to stop him from sending the missiles towards the military so they don't all die. And one of those stray bullets hits Xavier in the back and basically is why he's paralyzed. And then, of course, Magneto ends up in prison. Or no, wait, he's not in prison in this one. But at the end, he gets that helmet from Kevin Bacon's character that can block Professor Xavier's mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, the final line of the movie is like, I prefer Magneto. Which is pretty corny. But I mean, it's
the laziest version of that is in The Dark Knight Rises, when Joseph Gordon-Levitt like hands in his ID badge and his name is John Blake, and the woman goes, "You should use your real name. I like it, Robin."
Yeah.
What? Where the fuck did that come from? At least with Magneto, they kind of have the scene where Jennifer Lawrence is trying to create the nicknames, and she tells them, "We think you should be Professor X and you should be Magneto."
Yeah. But they did their best there.
It also has the extremely on-the-nose line towards the end where Charles gets shot in the back and Rose Byrne's holding him, and he goes, "I can't feel my legs. I can't feel my legs."
Yeah. Very dramatic.
Like, oh, yeah, we didn't know that was going to happen because you didn't spend 3 movies in a wheelchair.
Did they just make that up the way that happened, like for the movie purposes? Or
I feel like they had to have.
Is that like a comic thing? Like, is that one of the stories out of a comic book?
I don't know enough about the X-Men comics to know if that's true, but I feel like they had to have shoehorned that in. And if you remember Days of Future Past, he like quite shockingly is not in a wheelchair when that movie opens. And you're like very confused because you saw him in one when the movie ended. When First Class ended, that is. But they have there's like some whole serum shit. But anyway.
Well, that's one thing with superhero movies for me. It's like, I never know. Like, is this out of some kind of comic book, or is this something they just made up for the purpose of the narrative in a film? I have no idea. I never know. Because I didn't really read comics growing up. I watched the cartoons and stuff, but I never read, I wasn't like a big comic guy or anything.
I wasn't either, but I watched a lot of these movies and kind of get my knowledge from that. I don't think I'm like into these movies enough to go balls deep into the comics, but
yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, X-Men First Class is great for a reboot of the franchise, and just leave it at that. Let's get on to the bigger, better movies.
Let's move on to beginners.
This is 2003. This is what the sun looks like, and the stars. This is the president. And this is the sun in 1955, and the stars, and the president. My parents got married in 1955. They had a child, and they stayed married for 44 years until my mother died. 6 months later, my father told me he was gay.
I'm gay.
I remember him wearing a purple sweater when he told me this, but actually he wore a robe.
This is a movie that you said you had seen before?
Yeah, so I was, I think it was 2014, a friend of mine that I'd been friends with since like high school. Her and I kind of reconnected because we found out we lived near each other, because she like moved for a little while and then came back. But she was a huge fan of this movie, and I never heard of it. And we just like got together with a group of friends at her place and watched it. And I had no idea like what it was about or anything. And I think she kind of vaguely gave me the synopsis or whatever. But yeah, man, really, really loved it for that one viewing I had of it. And then I think like a year later, I met Kat, and then we, the rest is history, right? Now we're married and we have a beautiful daughter. But I just completely forgot about this movie. I loved it when I watched it, but when we were looking through the movies for 2011 and for this month, I was like, oh man, Beginners. That's such a good movie. And it just completely went off my radar. So revisiting it it's definitely my favorite of what we've covered so far this year. I really, really loved it, man. Even more so than the first time I watched it. And it takes quite a bit for me to like cry during a movie, but I had some tears flowing towards the end. So really great flick.
It's a really it's a sad movie in a way that's not overtly sad. Like it's not trying to necessarily make you cry, I think. But the main character is definitely, played by Ewan McGregor. He's going through some form of depression, as is the girl that he's embarking on this romance with, played by Melanie Laurent, who's
Oh my God, who I love.
yeah,
Absolutely love her. And I forgot she was in it. So I'm watching the movie and I'm like, oh man, Melanie, from Inglourious Bastards fame, which I guess Inglourious Bastards it was only like a couple years before this movie. So she was kind of hot off that.
Yeah, that was, I think that's how she gets cast in this, probably, is right off of that. And
yeah, she's just incredible. So charming, so wonderful. Just every scene she's in, every frame, it's just like
her best scene to me is the first one where we meet her and her character has laryngitis and she's conveying everything just with looks. It's entirely with her face. And I think she does like just a really great job of conveying like each of those emotions through their kind of meet cute without using any words, really.
Did they say she has laryngitis, or did she say that? I must have missed that in the second.
She writes.
You know what? I did pause it right when they'd met, and I went
on the notepad.
Okay, that's so funny because the second time around watching it, I was like, man, did they ever explain why she doesn't talk at first? Because I wasn't sure if she was like mute or something, and then finally she starts talking, and I'm like, oh, okay, she's fine. I don't know. She was just being silly. That's funny that I missed that. Nice.
Yeah, there's a moment where she writes it on the notepad, laryngitis. But yeah, I saw this movie in 2011 around Oscars season because Christopher Plummer would go on to win the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor in this movie. He's still to this day the oldest person to ever win an Oscar, and it's for this role. Which, I mean, he's just a legend of the screen. He has so many famous, memorable roles, and this is probably one of them. He's just, I don't know, there's something so warm about him, I feel like. And for me personally, I think the romance of this story is very charming, but the best part of the film for me is the relationship between Ewan McGregor and his father.
Yeah, for sure, man. It's like the central part of the film is that.
Yeah, and I kind of forgot, having not seen it for 10 years, that the movie starts with Christopher Plummer's character already having passed away. I kind of thought that you get, because of the nature of the storytelling, there's a lot of flashback. His relationship to Melanie Laurent is entirely in present day. And as he's meeting her, it's kind of flashing back over the last 3 to 4 years of his dad's life, and how, after his mother died, his dad came out as gay and lived openly as a gay man, found a boyfriend, and just really learned how to be happy, which, to cover this movie during Pride Month, I feel like it's very appropriate and completely on accident on our part.
Yeah.
Having watched it, it's just such a, I don't know, it's such a good story about just being yourself, embracing who you are, and not being afraid of it. I think like even 10 years ago, the amount of gay stories we got was a lot less than it is today.
Yeah.
And obviously in the time when this is taking place, it's I think it's 2003 is when this movie is set.
Yep.
So even less so in 2003 was, homosexuality, something that we talked openly about. But yeah, it's just a really,
we were like on the cusp of finally,
right,
things were finally getting better, but it hadn't quite happened yet. Because I remember the movie being about Christopher Plummer being, father to Ewan McGregor, and he comes out as a gay man. but I couldn't figure out exactly like how it all placed in the story. And like you just said, yeah, it's starting out with him already deceased. I'd forgotten that as well. But I love when movies do that. Like they go, whatever it's set. So this came out in 2011. So they put it in 2003, which isn't that far into the past.
Right.
But it's far enough to, I guess, like, be a period piece, especially when it comes to homosexuality at the time, because it wasn't as accepted in 2003 as it was in 2011. And in 2011, it wasn't accepted as much as it is now. And now it's finally like things are way better. We have this wonderful month in June where we can celebrate gay pride, and it's in such a better place now. And, this movie, man, it's just like poetry, really, to me, about a man who is really struggling with his homosexuality, because he grew up in the 50s, 60s, 70s, where it was super not okay. And you were basically just like banished from whatever your life was. I mean, I think there's a line in the movie where it says basically you give up everything. And this, I love that, how it does that, the editing of the photos from different times in the past, whether it's like the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. And it's like you're giving up your life, if you choose to be homosexual, or you choose to go this path or that path. And this is what life is. This is what happiness is, and that's just what was expected of people, to be a certain way. And if you were to go down the wrong path or whatever, then you're just throwing away your life. And that's just the way it was. And to go for like 44 years, I think he was married to his wife before she died, and to finally come out as a gay man, and in the year 2000, I guess it would have been 1999, right? Because he came out 4 years before he passed. So
right,
yeah, and like late 90s, right? It was even worse than 2003. I mean, so yeah, man, I loved that progression throughout the film and how it kind of jumped around the different decades, and it really kind of dove into the relationship between his mother and father. And you actually find out towards the end, like, why they end up getting married. And I don't even want to give it away, man, because this movie is too damn good. Like the way it just unfolds itself towards the end, especially with Christopher Plummer's character, which is why he deserved that Oscar, because his character development is just so damn good. And Ian McGregor is his son, struggling with those like lack of emotions that his mother had. They have these great flashbacks of him as a child hanging out with his mom, and his mom's kind of like, she's kind of crazy, because
a little bit.
I think she's just sort of accepted the fact that this is her life, and she's not going to have a
loveless marriage.
Yeah, it's sad. Like it's like she's not going to have like a truly intimate relationship with her husband, because he just is the way he is, but he can't fully embrace it. So they're just going to keep going with what's been working for them and what they think is best for their kid. Yeah, man. It's really like also the evolution of sadness, right? And I think that's kind of what he's working on with his own job. And because he's like an illustrator, right? That's I guess he's in the middle of like a big project for some sort of artist, musical group maybe, or I don't know if they ever really fully explain who he's working for, but basically his piece is like reflective upon the way he's feeling in the current state of his life, where he's just sad all the time, and he's just like obsessed with this timeline throughout the history of mankind of like just sadness and being sad, but also recognizing like what being happy is, and the way you should live your life, and the way relationships should go. And he's just like, it's all about him masking his sadness with these ideas of what happiness is supposed to be. It's just it's a coming of age for like a man in his late 30s, which I love. Coming of age films, of course, I'm a big sucker for them. And yeah, maybe watching it a second time at 37, where I'm close to his age, he's 38 in the movie, maybe it has more of an effect on me. And I think it made me appreciate even more like what I have in my life.
Mm-hmm.
With I have a great, amazing wife and beautiful daughter, and we all get sad sometimes, right? For whatever reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Life's tough, man, especially when you just got through a fucking pandemic. So yeah, there's so many beautiful aspects of this movie, with every character. And sorry, I just went on like a crazy rant, but
No, I
but
mean,
in a good way.
I
Yeah,
really think like it's a truly poetic movie, and it makes complete sense to love it as much as you do. And I think it's kind of a shame that Mike Mills, who's the writer director of this, has worked as little as he has, because I think he has such a distinct voice. And I've not seen his first film, which is called Thumbsucker, but he did a film in 2016 called 20th Century Women. And it's a very similar storytelling technique where it's kind of using still images to tell this story of time and place. And that movie takes place during the 70s. And it's like using these characters to kind of link you into a certain time and create a certain feeling. And I think I found it a little quirky at first, the storytelling method of, he would use those pictures to be like, the year is 2003. This is what pets look like. This is a family. This is the president. And he would like list all of these things. And
this is what the stars look like.
Right. This is the stars and the sky and
nature and
right. And I kind of thought it was quirky at first and a little strange, but then as the movie kept going and you see them use it more and more to tell these stories of time and place, and in a way it's almost used to illustrate, in my opinion, that like as time goes on, a lot of things will change, but a lot of things also stay the same. Like some things will always be the same, even as we go through these drastic changes, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. And obviously, the acceptance of homosexuality has continued to grow, and we still have a long way to go. But I love the way they kind of use that method of storytelling to talk about, the 50s and, the 60s when this character was born, and talk about what it was like then and why someone like Hal Fields, which is the character's name, would be reluctant to come out and live his true self for the majority of his life. So they really tell like this deeper story about identity through this smaller story about two people falling in love, two people that are not necessarily at the happiest points in their life, finding happiness in each other. And I think that there's something kind of beautiful about that, and particularly the way that the film ends, which I really love the closing line where they're like sitting on the bed together and he just says, well, now what? And that's the end of the film. And it's this like, the title kind of clicks into place for you at that moment, because it's like, just like his dad, he's finding a chance to begin again, like later in life, like he can start anew. And
he says, what do we do now? And then she says, I don't know. And he goes, how do we do that?
Yeah.
And then again, it's so good. And I really loved, one of my favorite scenes was his father, Oliver's father, Hal, is he's got stage 4 cancer. This is after he had an entirely other sickness that he came out of. What was it that he had at first? And then do you remember? And it turned into cancer because they discovered a
tumor.
I think it was yeah, I think it was in the bottom of his lung or something, and it had already spread to too many places to where they like surgery wasn't even an option. So he was basically like given the death sentence. Like this is what's going to happen, and you can go through radiation, chemo, and stay around a little longer, but there's really no cure. And yeah, it gets to the point of stage 4 cancer, and he doesn't want to tell his now lover about it because he just wants to keep things happy and not stress him out. And so when Oliver, Ian McGregor's character, goes in, because his father basically asked him, can you let him know, because it had gone too long without him knowing that he was basically dying of cancer. And Oliver goes in to tell Andy that he's gonna die of cancer, within the next few months. And Andy's working out, and he's like standing there, and it ends up turning into this like awkward sort of, I don't want you to think that I want to have sex with you. I don't. I know, like, you look at me as a gay man, you probably think I want to have sex with you, but I don't want to have sex with you. And Oliver is just kind of standing there like, whoa, man, no, like, I don't. He doesn't even know what to say,
Right.
because he isn't that kind of guy. Like, he really has no issues with gay people, and he's completely supportive of his father coming out and being gay, and he sees that it makes him happy, and he's just he's just one of those good dudes that is okay with it from the very beginning. Like, he never sees it as a problem.
Right.
But Andy, just in his own insecurities, he kind of automatically just thinks that, like, Hal's son is gonna look at him differently, because most everyone does. Most everyone looks at him like, you're gay, and I don't think that's cool, and I think you want to have sex with me, and that's in his head. He's insecure in that way, and then he couldn't even tell him about his father being diagnosed with cancer and that he's going to die. He ends up leaving the room because he's like, well, it's turned into a whole other conversation. So yeah, I mean, I guess he never even really finds out until he has to go on hospice. But yeah, that scene was like kind of gut wrenching, because you see the insecurities of Andy, who's just been mistreated by his own father most of his life, and just another like layer of the movie that makes the kind of things that make this movie so good.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think this movie is definitely better than I remembered. It like resonates more with me 10 years later. And yeah, I think that, I don't know about top 5, but this is going to be in contention for me at the end of the year for sure. It's like right in that zone with some of the other great things that we've watched. I think it really was a pleasant surprise to revisit it and have it kind of hit even stronger than the last time. But on that note, I think we can move forward, and we could finish up by talking about J.J. Abrams' Super 8.
Be good for you to spend some time with kids who don't run around with cameras and monster makeup.
We're filming tonight, midnight, okay? Don't forget.
I won't. Over.
And action! Guys, watch out!
Do not speak of this. If you do, they will find you.
I've got 9 people missing now. There are things happening around here that I can't explain.
I don't feel good about this.
I saw it. No one believes me.
I believe you.
This film is not yet rated.
Super 8 made it in my preseason top 5 of 2011. I, more than anyone I know, I think, love this movie wholeheartedly. And I'm not someone that's a huge J.J. Abrams fan. I think that he's very good at what he does. He's a blockbuster filmmaker that knows how to do a fun popcorn movie that plays homage to some classics that you love that remind you of your childhood, and he can like hit those buttons to perfection and make you just get swept away in, you know, your memories of what it was like to be a kid watching E.T. for the first time, or Star Wars, and like falling in love with movies and wonder and imagination. And that's what JJ is good at. He like knows how to bottle that specific emotion, and he can recreate it with his films. Super 8 in particular, I like because I think it's the only J.J. Abrams movie that's not a franchise. Everything else he's done is Mission Impossible or Star Trek or Star Wars, and this is a original story that pays some blatant homage to the Amblin films, you know, early Spielberg. There's a lot of E.T. in there. Some definite...
And Spielberg produces it as well.
Yeah, he does. There's some definite Close Encounters of the Third Kind vibes. But I think he just really, with Super 8, he's able to take that feeling I was describing and bring it into the 21st century with special effects and updating the visual abilities of these films. The train sequence in the beginning is phenomenal. I remember seeing that in theaters and just being like, holy shit, like what a crazy good action set piece.
Yeah, the special effects in this movie are so good.
Especially seeing it in I believe I saw it in IMAX, like when that was first becoming a thing in the early 2010s. And it just really like takes your breath away to see the way that they executed that entire sequence. And aside from that, a lot of people complain about the story. They say like the story's pretty bleak. I think it works for me. I think that as a kid that has, I'm also younger. So, you know, when I saw Super 8, I'm 17 and a little bit closer to my childhood at that point. And as, you know, a kid that definitely had my group of friends that we would roam the neighborhood and, you know, think of different ways to have fun and be creative. This movie brings back a lot of those memories. And I'm sure it's in a lot of ways somewhat autobiographical for JJ, because I imagine him growing up as one of those kids with the Super 8 camera that's trying to make stupid monster movies with his friends. And that aspect of it just really works for me. I think that Elle Fanning is mind-blowingly good for a 12-year-old girl. Like she just kind of like comes in, and her sister has been this child star for years prior. And you just watch this movie, you're like, holy shit.
Was she really 12? I mean, I know she's playing a 12-year-old, but was she actually 12 years old?
I have to confirm this.
Because I thought she looked like older than she was in the movie. She's fantastic. But
Elle Fanning, when they filmed Super 8, was 12 years old.
Wow. Yeah,
She's
man.
20, she just turned 23.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, 9 years ago, 10 years ago. Yeah, I thought
she's great.
I thought she was definitely the best actor of the movie, for sure. Which is pretty amazing considering you got pretty good cast in there. And then, yeah, I totally see what you're saying about. I mean, you saw it when you were 17, so I saw it when I was 27, and for me, I had a little different approach. I was more like, and like I know what this is going to be. This is going to be a ripoff of like the old Spielberg movies that I grew up with and that I've seen from the 80s and whatever. So I was a little more going into it like, I'm sure I know exactly what this is going to be. I'm sure I'll like it, whatever. And I watched it in theater, and I did. I enjoyed it, but it was exactly what I was expecting. So I kind of just left it at that, and I don't think I thought about it too much. And then going into it again, watching it now 10 years later, I knew right away I was going to enjoy it way more than I did when I saw it 10 years ago, because now we're in the age of like Stranger Things, and we're in the age of all these like shows that are just really paying homage to the old stuff that we used to love and cherish. And, the blueprint's all there, right?
Right.
For making these great, fun, whatever, sci-fi or action comedy movies. And yeah, I mean, I love Stranger Things. And Kat mentioned this. She was like, oh, well, it seems like this movie, since it came out in 2011, it probably was kind of like Kickstarter to that Stranger Things franchise, because they saw that worked and they're like, well, shit, we should make a show kind of on the same vein.
It feels a lot like Stranger Things.
Oh yeah, dude.
Yeah.
It totally does. And when you can get a good cast of kids like Super 8 does, and then, following Stranger Things does the same thing, they just get this great cast of young actors to play these kids that are just, they want to shoot a monster movie, or they just want to go play Dungeons and Dragons and it's fucking aliens invade their town or whatever. Like, it's so much fun to watch, and I enjoy it. I'm not as cynical as I was 10 years ago. So now it's just all that stuff opens back up for me like I was a kid again watching it. So I was completely enthralled this time around. And yeah, it's kind of dumb fun, right? Like, whatever. Mm-hmm. The old town gets overtaken by the military because there's an alien is on the loose, I mean, like, that shit's cool, man. It's fun. It's
right.
And I think I could see a movie like this, if it's made well, I could see 100 different versions of this movie made and enjoy the hell out of it. So yeah.
What's so funny about their little like student project they're working on is that the type of movie they're trying to make is the exact type of movie they're actually in.
Yeah,
they're trying to make a silly monster movie that's kind of like a ripoff of these classics, and that's
George Romero.
Yeah, it's exactly what Super 8 is. And I think one of my favorite parts of the entire film is during the credits when we get to watch Charles's movie. It just like makes me crack up watching for one, the way that the writing just feels like the way a 12-year-old would write dialogue.
Yeah.
He casts Elle Fanning from his classroom because the story needs a wife to have a more emotional tie into the main character. And the way that he writes their goodbye is he's like, what do you think, I'm going to go to Michigan with you? And she's like, Mackinac Island's beautiful this time of year. And just like, they say the things to each other that kids assume adults say to each other.
Yeah.
And I had a blast getting to watch the actual like filmed version of his movie, especially like parts where they're like these little tiny kids playing adults and saying things to each other like, it's been a lot since we fought in Vietnam. Those were hard times.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that aspect of it. And I feel like a kid again when I watch these movies. It reminds me of going to the movies, with my friends and just watching something that was going to be a fun ride and talking about it after. And it's a time that I feel a little wistful for, because in like the days of streaming, we don't get as many experiences like that aren't connected to Marvel. We get so few big original franchise films that are like, sci-fi classic monster movie that, elicits Spielberg and Romero and all those guys. So I admit that it's maybe not the best film on a technical level, but man, it has a big place in my heart for sure.
Yeah. And going back to the cast too, I mean, Kyle Chandler as Deputy Jackson,
Coach Tate.
Yeah, man, that guy's great. He's an underrated actor, man. I love that guy, and he's so good in. He's so good in Wolf of Wall Street, dude. Oh my god, he's one of my favorite characters in that movie. And I don't think he's used enough. Like, what else? He's like really not in a ton of stuff. I mean, like he's in plenty, but I'm saying as far as movies that I've seen,
he just pops in small roles, and he's usually just awesome in every small part that he gets. I'm a huge Friday Night Lights fan, so like,
yeah, I've never watched that show, but I know he was big in that.
Yeah, I love him from that. Like, I cannot see him and not think Coach Taylor, Clear Eyes, Full Hearts, Can't Lose. I always connect him to that show. But I do think in Super 8, his character is sadly a little bit underwritten. We don't get a lot of time to develop what that relationship is actually like between Joe and his dad. They mention that Joe's dad is the deputy, obviously, and he's kind of distant, and the mom dies and he wants Joe to go to baseball camp, but we really don't get to see much beyond that.
They never really tell you what the accident is either that she was in. What happened?
Some kind of factory accident, like a steel beam, I think, fell on top of her.
Yeah.
But at the end of the movie, when Kyle Chandler and Elle Fanning's dad, who happened to be the one that worked with Kyle Chandler's wife that passed away.
Ron Eldard, man. That guy's great too. He goes all the way back to like Deep Impact, Black Hawk Down, that actor as well. Like, great actor. Also underrated. I always thought he was good.
Yeah, he's good in this movie too. And he's the one that was supposed to go into work that day, but got drunk and had to call in sick. So Kyle Chandler's wife goes in instead. She's the one that ends up getting killed, and it creates this rift. But they kind of come together at the end to find their kids. And we get this moment.
I needed more of that.
What's that?
More of that too. I needed more of that, like those two together, like teaming up. Like you know what I mean? Like that was a fun little twist in the end. And I wish.
I think the movie, I really love the final 5 minutes or so. The alien spaceship building a model out of the metal and flying off into space to go home, and then like families reuniting and stuff. But they definitely rushed their way there. Like the ending is like very sped through to get to the ending, which it's not a very long movie. I think it's like an hour 45. So you maybe could have added a little more on there to like give us some more substance when it came to the dad characters. Because there's a big emotional beat where Kyle Chandler hugs his son and says, "I gotcha." And the music swells, and they want it to be this like huge emotional moment. And for me, it works because I love Kyle Chandler. So like I'm watching that and I'm like, "Oh, Kyle Chandler, you're such a good guy. And I love you in Friday Night Lights. So I love this scene." But from the standing of Super 8, I don't know if the movie necessarily earns that like big emotional embrace. Yeah, I did like the beat with the locket that the main character has with a picture of his mom inside of it, and it flies out of his pocket towards the spaceship, and there's this cool freeze frame where he grabs it in midair.
Yeah, and he lets it go.
Right. The music.
Lets that part of him go.
I mean, right down to the score. The score does the da-na-na-na, da-na-na-na. And then you have E.T.
Beautiful,
which is,
beautiful.
And then E.T. is the da 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 na 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 da. So it's I mean, it's like very, very similar.
Yeah. And yeah, everyone's really good in this movie. Like the main kid, his name's Joel Courtney, is the actor. It was kind of fun because I'm watching this movie like, okay, other than like Ellie Fanning, or I'm sorry, is it? I think Kat corrected me on this. Is it just Elle Fanning? I don't want to
Elle Fanning.
mess that up. Elle Fanning, who again she was the best actor in this film, but all the other kids, I'm like, have they done anything? Have they gone anywhere? I don't recognize any of them in today. Now I'm seeing that the main kid is actually doing pretty good. He's in that Kissing Booth show. I didn't hear that. That was pretty popular. It had a sequel. Man, he's like super yoked now. He's this little stud muffin. And then I don't know, like, but the rest of these guys, the rest of these kids, not much of a career. I don't guess.
I was actually like, so I looked into this. The kid that plays Charles, I remember thinking like he was kind of like a scene stealer in the movie. Like he's kind of funny and plays that like goofy best friend character.
Yeah.
It's the only thing he's ever acted in, ever, is Super 8. Even to this day, he's quit acting and he's a football player at Montana State.
Wow. Yeah, look at that.
So that's what's become of him.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to watch, like, or to see, like, because child actors were such a thing when I was growing up with movies. Obviously, I had Macaulay Culkin and Elijah Wood and gosh, who else? There's a number of other ones. I mean, whatever, the kid from Terminator, obviously all the 80s guys. I don't know, no need to name them all, but it's, a lot of them don't end up having great adult careers. Most of them kind of get forgotten about because, they get older. They didn't necessarily age the way Hollywood wanted them to age. I don't know, maybe drugs are involved, maybe they party too hard, who knows? So it's pretty rare when you get like a child actor. Oh yeah, what was the one? I See Dead People. That kid,
Haley Joel Osment. Yeah,
Haley Joel Osment, right? Like, thought he was going to be this great actor for his whole career, and that wasn't the case. I mean, he's still had a good career in directing, and he's acted some stuff to this day, and he's just great. Like,
I mean, look at Elle's sister, like Dakota Fanning was a star in the 2000s. Like, she's in War of the Worlds and Man on Fire and I Am Sam. Like, she's just like headlining all these big films. And now
it's Elle.
Away. What was that?
But now it's Elle. Elle's the one that's big.
Yeah, I think she's actually gone on to probably have the better career. Although I think Dakota Fanning has still had a nice little career for herself. She's just not the star in things.
I mean, I've always wanted to watch this Neon Demon movie. She's the main person in that. Huh?
Speaking of Mike Mills from Beginners, she's actually an important character in 20th Century Women, Elle Fanning. Nice little performance in that movie.
Ah, cool.
All comes first, full circle. But yeah, I've never seen those Kissing Booth movies, but I know that my wife has watched them. So when we were watching Super 8 last night, and I'm like, oh shit, like this kid is from the Kissing Booth movies. And she's like, oh my God, it is. She goes, oh my God, he grew up. I'm like, yeah, that tends to happen.
Yeah, I think I saw like the actress of Kissing Booth get interviewed on like Today Show or something, but I would have never have guessed that the guy in that movie, in that show or whatever movie or whatever it is the kid from Super 8. That's funny.
Yeah, I mean, I like that they kind of have a scene in there that shows Elle Fanning is far and away the best actor in their fake movie. And it kind of also plays into the fact that she's the best actor in their real movie too.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I like that the movies, I said earlier it could have been longer. I also like that it's kind of shorter because I think too much of it may have gotten exhausting, but it's just the right amount.
Well, yeah, it's funny today. I mean, we live in the age of Yeah, the most popular things that we're watching now are miniseries on Netflix or Amazon or HBO, and those are basically just super long movies, right? Um,
Yeah, I mean,
and
Super 8, if it's made today, would have been a TV show probably.
well, it's Stranger Things. It is. It's made, and it's 3 seasons. I think what, like 10 episodes a season or something like that, give or take. And yeah, you're talking about I don't know, what is that, a 30-hour movie? Like when you put them all together, it's insane, dude.
Right down to the fact that like the lead adult male character is law enforcement. You know?
Yeah. It's exactly same thing, right? It's this dude Hopper. He's the local cop in town that is the one investigating the alien invasion, and then of course the government and the military are all involved with trying to keep it hush hush.
And I'm fairly confident that both Super 8 and Stranger Things have a scene at a gas station where someone gets abducted at a gas station. Like that's always it's always a classic thing for like a monster movie to have like a gas station attack.
Yeah, and we can't walk away tonight without talking about, if we're going to talk about J.J. Abrams, without talking about his lens flares and his use of the blue streak filter. He loves that fucking blue streak. He's always hitting the light just right. If I don't know, are you familiar with what a blue streak filter is?
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, right. He puts that over the in front of the lens, and it hits the light just right where he wants it, and you get all that kind of those fun little flares, especially in the beginning of the movie. I mean, it's all throughout.
He's obsessed with it.
You could count the lens flares. There'd be a lot of them, and it's kind of his signature look to all his films. You know, you'll see it in Star Trek, Star Wars, and all that. But yeah, man, can't talk about a J.J. Abrams production without that lens flare, without that blue streak.
Super 8's maybe where he uses it the most. I feel like this movie has so many night shoots that he really uses that blue light. I still think this is not a super high bar, but this is the best of his movies, in my opinion.
He's got the first Star Trek was pretty good.
First Star Trek, Mission Impossible 3, Star Wars The Force Awakens. Those are like the only contenders, probably.
He's such a funny looking guy. Gosh, this is the best movie. He's the producer on Mission Impossible 7 and 8, currently filming.
I think he produces all of those.
God, he produces so much. He was an executive producer on Lovecraft Country. You know, I gotta say, because I forgot he directed Mission Impossible 3. If I were to choose what his best movie is that he's directed, I think I'd have to go Mission Impossible 3. And then I put Super 8 down there.
I mean, I adore Mission Impossible 3. Like,
yeah, it's so good, dude. It's like arguably the best one because it's just so different and it's so dark.
Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah. I think I would take that.
It's it's tough because I think that and we'll talk about a Mission Impossible movie later this year, but that franchise has like 3 movies I think that are just awesome. Like the third, and then like the last couple of them, and even the fourth one's pretty good.
I'll also take the 2 episodes of Felicity that he directed. I love that show.
The 2 episodes of Felicity. Didn't he do like Alias and Lost? Like he did a lot of TV work.
Yeah. Yeah, Well, he was like the main creator of Lost, wasn't he?
I think so. Him and Damon Lindelof.
Yeah, I never watched that show. That was that weird time where I just wasn't watching television shows.
This movie won the Saturn Award for Best Film of the Year. which I guess is a science fiction thing.
Yeah, man. I mean, it was great. I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun with it. It was a pleasure to revisit. So
I think this movie definitely gets forgotten a lot. Like, no one really thinks about it as like an important movie of the last 10 years. But I think I routinely kind of bring it up, like, isn't Super 8 kind of good? And people are like, is it? I didn't think so, but I will stand up for it. If you like fun sci-fi blockbuster films, this is, hard to get much better than one like this. So Super 8, I don't know if it's going to stay in my top 5 at the end of the year, but we will reevaluate when that time comes.
Yeah, it's not in my top 5. I'm pretty certain, but it was fun. It was really fun.
Well, I think that's going to do it for the June episode of Back to the Decade. We'll be back next month with another fun round of movies. I think we have Captain America, the First Avenger. We have Horrible Bosses, another great comedy of the year and the decade overall. And then
that might make my top 5.
Crazy Stupid Love, which is a movie that we both like a lot. So,
oh yeah,
that'll be a fun episode. So thanks for listening, and we will see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Elsewhere on We Made This.
The Movie Palace.
Yeah, I can remember my first viewing of The Sound of Music quite distinctly, actually, because it was 8 days ago.
You've never seen it before that?
8 days ago was the first time I'd sat down to watch it from start to finish. Now, I always associate The Sound of Music... It's interesting that you both talk about it as an Easter thing. It is associated with bank holidays here, but I don't think it's just Easter. So I had seen a lot of these sequences. I think if I was inside on a bank holiday when I was a child and The Sound of Music was on, it was normally a bad thing because it meant it was raining and I couldn't go out and play football.
Shipwrecked and Comatose, a Red Dwarf podcast.
I've got 5 tattoos. So I started getting tattoos when I was about 5 years ago, and it was just sort of one by one, I guess. So not huge coverage, but I'm definitely got the bug, so to speak. So, but the latest one is the Red Dwarf one. Yeah,
and that's the one you've decided to talk about today. Describe it for me.
Yeah.
Free with this month's issue.
Obviously, you must remember the sign in musical exchanges.
I do indeed.
Not play. Yeah, there was a few riffs, weren't there, that you weren't allowed to play. This being top of them.
Enter Sandman, Smoke on the Water, Stairway to Heaven, anything wiggly above the 12th fret, I think that song said.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that paid no attention to that shit. Remember when we almost got thrown out for playing with that delay pedal?
Yes.
It was amazing.
I also remember the day that I went in with my birthday money to musical exchanges to buy a pedal, and I ended up buying the Boss Hyper Metal, and I was insisting to the bloke that I was buying it from. I was like, I don't really play much metal, I just like the sound of it. I want to use it for sort of, more experimental sounds, like you're wearing a Metallica t-shirt.
I'm not that into metal, actually.
I want to do something more like Swans with it, like My Bloody Valentine, that kind of thing.
Which I did, but I was wearing a Metallica t-shirt at the time.
Check out all of these shows and more on the We Made This podcast network.